Max, definitely. Russ,
no,
not this season.
Not this season.
Loren.
Russ died.
Russ didn't die.
What?
No, he didn't. Oh, so sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Breathe. Breathe. Push. Yeah. Push.
He got shot in the head by some paint.
One man worked alongside Tom Hanks. He was on his way to becoming one of the biggest names in Hollywood. People in this industry looked at him and saw a future, a real one. And then he just vanished. No explanation, no press statement, no dramatic exit interview, no goodbye of any kind. He was there, building something remarkable, and then he was not. Like he stepped off a cliff nobody else could see. One cast member was waging a war so dark and so consuming inside his own mind that most of the people standing right next to him on set had absolutely no idea it was happening. Not a clue. And the whole time, season after season, year after year, the cameras kept rolling and the audience kept laughing and he kept showing up, kept delivering, kept being the person everyone needed him to be. And one man, a man who spent multiple seasons giving Temperance Brennan back, the father she had mourned and grieved and quietly, desperately never stopped needing, that man is gone now. December 2023, and if you blinked at the wrong moment, you missed the tribute entirely. This is the real story of the Bones cast, not the polished version, the one underneath it, where they went when the lights went off, what they built when nobody was watching, what they survived when the cameras could no longer follow them, and what some of them never fully came back from. You already clicked on this, which means some part of you never completely closed the door on this show. So before we dive in, do you remember the first time you actually sat down and watched Bones where you were? Who you were with? That opening theme easing you in before the case pulled you under. That lab, those faces, looking back at you, if that show meant something to you, and it did, you would not be here if it did not hit that subscribe button right now. Because we are going to give this show and every single person who made it the kind of tribute it actually deserves. And if there is a specific character on your mind right now, someone you feel never gets enough attention, someone the other videos always walk straight past, drop their name in the comments and make sure you are subscribed. Because we are going deeper into this world and we want to know exactly where to take it. Subscribe. Let's go. For 12 seasons, Bones was more than a procedural crime drama that aired on Fox on Tuesday nights. You know that. I know that. It was a ritual, a specific kind of comfort that very few shows ever figure out how to construct and maintain across more than a decade. That combination of case of the week momentum wrapped tight around a long, slow, agonizing, ultimately deeply satisfying love story. That electric, impossible tension between a woman who could read death better than most people read faces and a man who felt absolutely everything she refused to allow herself to feel. For 12 years, that show gave you a family to come back to every week. Strange, brilliant, occasionally infuriating, but yours. And then the finale aired, and the credits rolled for the last time. And most people said their goodbyes and kept moving, but a lot of us never quite let go. Not entirely. So today we go looking through every name in that cast, for the stories that never made it into the entertainment news cycle, for what actually happened after the Jeffersonian went quiet, because the real lives behind those characters turned out to be far more dramatic, far more complicated, and honestly, far more worth knowing than almost anything Brennan and Booth solved together in 12 seasons of casework, and we are starting right now, immediately. First, with the one person that every other video like this consistently walks straight past. The one name nobody ever puts at the top. The one whose story, once you actually know all of it, might be the most fascinating of anyone connected to this show. Russ Brennan, Temperance's older brother. And the man behind him, Loren Dean. Before we get to what happened after, you have to understand what Russ actually represented to this story. Because it was not just a recurring supporting role that dropped in every few seasons to give Brennan a subplot. Russ Brennan was her open wound. He was the living, breathing, sitting right across the table from her evidence that the Brennan family had been completely and permanently destroyed, and that some kinds of damage do not leave marks on bones. They leave marks in the space between two people who were supposed to protect each other and did not. They live in the pauses, in the things that do not get said at all, in the way two people can share the same blood, the same origin story, the same house they grew up in, and still feel like they are standing on opposite sides of a wall that neither of them built alone. Russ ran when the family collapsed around them both. When the parents disappeared and left two kids with nothing but each other and the worst possible set of circumstances, Russ made a choice. He chose to survive. He chose himself. And in doing that, he left Temperance to figure out the wreckage on her own. And every single time he appeared on screen, no matter how many years had passed between episodes, no matter how much ground they had covered, you felt the original weight of that decision pressing down on everything they said to each other. Loren Dean took that guilt and made it something you could feel through a television screen. You did not just understand Russ Brennan, you ached for him. The specific kind of aching you feel for someone carrying a debt they made their peace with but can never fully pay back. Now here is where this story turns into something nobody is talking about. Before Bones, before Russ Brennan, Loren Dean was building something that looked like the beginning of a career people write books about. Born July 23rd, 1969, in Las Vegas, Nevada. This man was not circling the edges of the industry, hoping for his opening. He was inside the room. Apollo 13, sitting across from Tom Hanks and Kevin Bacon in one of the most celebrated American films of its decade. Directed by Ron Howard at the height of his powers. Enemy of the State sharing scenes with Gene Hackman and Will Smith in a thriller that gripped the entire country when it opened. Space Cowboys alongside Clint Eastwood. A film that brought four Hollywood legends together and let Dean hold his own among them. You do not land those three films in that sequence by accident. You land them because serious, experienced people in this industry look at you and think, this person has something real, something the camera discovers on its own. And then Loren Dean looked at everything he had built, everything that was being offered, and walked away. No scandal that gave people a reason to stop rooting for him. No public breakdown the tabloids could spend a week analyzing. No tell-all interview where he processed everything out loud for an audience. He was not pushed out. He simply made a decision, and he honored it without explanation. And the industry, the same one that had him standing next to Tom Hanks and Clint Eastwood, kept moving as if he had never been there at all. That is how this business works. You look away for a moment, and the current closes over the space you left. Now in his mid-50s, Loren Dean remains one of the most deliberate and total disappearing acts in modern Hollywood. No Instagram, no press appearances, no convention circuit, no calculated reemergence designed to remind people he exists. Just silence. Chosen. Permanent. Absolute. In an industry where visibility and relevance feel synonymous to most people working inside it, Loren Dean looked at the exchange rate and decided it was not the deal he wanted to make. Some people will do anything to stay in the frame. Loren Dean decided the frame was optional. Is that mysterious completely? Is it, when you really sit with it, also one of the most quietly courageous things a person in his position could choose? I genuinely believe it is. Now let's talk about the woman the entire show was built around. Dr. Temperance Brennan and Emily Deschanel. If you watched this show from the beginning, before it had a fan base, before anyone was certain it would last past its first season, you watch something over the next 12 years that television almost never manages without losing it somewhere in the middle. Real character evolution. The kind that actually earns what it arrives at. Brennan started as a fortress, every wall reinforced and load-bearing. Brilliant in a way that was almost social at first, not because she was cruel, but because the emotional vocabulary other people relied on simply did not come naturally to her, and she had stopped pretending otherwise. She did not soften herself to make you comfortable. She did not apologize for how her mind worked or what it cost the people around her. She was deliberately alienating in the early seasons, and the show trusted that. Emily Deschanel trusted it. And because they trusted it, what came later actually meant something. Because then she cracked open, not in one dramatic climax, not in a rain scene with swelling music. She cracked open the way real people do, incrementally, in unguarded seconds, in the spaces between what she said and what she was actually feeling underneath it. The way she started letting Booth matter to her, the way she started letting herself be known, not just analyzed, not just respected, but actually known by another person. That journey from a woman who could reconstruct a murder from a fragment of tibia and feel almost nothing, to someone who could hold love and grief and genuine loss inside herself without it destroying her, that is one of the most extraordinary character arcs in the history of American network television. And Emily Deschanel delivered every beat of it without calling attention to how well she was doing it. Emily was born September 11, 1976, in Los Angeles. After 12 years as Brennan, she made a choice that surprised the people who follow this industry closely. She stopped. Not as a strategic pause. Not as a calculated gap before the next big announcement. She went home. She raised her children. She leaned into the causes that matter to her when no one is watching animal welfare. Veganism. The unglamorous work of living according to what you actually believe. And when she decided to return, she walked into Animal Kingdom and reminded everyone watching exactly what 12 years of leading a drama does to a performer who was already exceptional to begin with. Now, in her late 40s, she is exactly where she chose to be, on her own terms. A force. Then there is Celie Booth and David Boreanaz. Because this story does not work without serious time spent on the man who stood across from Brennan for 12 years and made the audience never forget that behind everything the banter, the closed cases, the tension that stretched across an entire decade there was a human being held together by something that looked a lot like stubbornness and something that looked even more like faith. Booth was complicated. He was wrong sometimes in ways that cost the people he loved. The gambling addiction came back more than once, and the show did not pretend otherwise. The trauma from his military service was not a backstory detail to reference, and moved past it was present in how he held himself, in what he could not release, in what he needed to believe in order to keep doing the job. His faith was tested in almost every single case they worked together. What made Booth a hero was never that he was invincible. It was that he kept showing up even when the work was taking something from him that did not grow back easily. David Boreanaz understood that character completely. Born May 16, 1969, in Buffalo, New York. Here is the number that tells you everything you need to know about this man. Since 1997, since a recurring role in the very first season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, David Boreanaz has been the lead of a television series every single year without a break. Buffy, Angel, 12 seasons of Bones, SEAL Team, which he carries right now with the same locked-in focus he brought to every role before it. That is nearly 3 decades of sustained leading performance. That is not timing or luck or a favorable cultural moment. That is discipline and commitment at a level the industry genuinely cannot find a reason to turn away from. His personal life hit real turbulence, a public admission in 2010 that could have cost him everything. And did cost him certain things. He faced it directly. He stayed. His marriage held. He went back to work. Now in his mid-50s, still the lead. Still at full intensity. Still someone whose presence on a screen changes the weight of every scene he is in. A permanent institution. Now, this is the one that actually stops you. Zack Addy. Eric Milligan. The Lab's prodigy. Young. Awkward. Brilliant in a way that was almost painful to watch, because you could see so clearly that the world was going to be too sharp for someone that soft in the places that actually mattered. He made you laugh. He made you feel protective in a way that crept up on you slowly and then was just there. Permanent. Part of how you watch the show. And then, in a twist that the Bones fandom has never fully processed, never fully forgiven the writers for, still debates loudly. Whenever the subject comes up, he broke something in the audience that ran much deeper than a plot development. Eric Milligan was born August 20th, 1974, in Jackson, Tennessee. After Bones, he did not step into another series, did not announce a film, did not show up at fan events with a polished answer about what he was working on next. He went quiet. And for a long time, the most natural assumption was that he was taking a break, resting after a long run. The real story had more weight to it than that. Years after his diagnosis, Eric Milligan went public. Bipolar disorder, a battle he had been waging privately for his entire run on the show. Season after season, showing up to set, hitting his marks, being funny and strange and beloved by millions of viewers, while carrying something inside himself that most people will never fully understand unless they have been inside it. He described it without softening it. It was very hard. It was very painful. He had written a screenplay about the experience. He spoke about wanting to act again, about Broadway, about finding the right role, about the work he had not finished. Here is what gets flattened when this becomes a single line in a Where Are They Now list. Eric Milligan did not disappear because the industry set him aside. He stepped back because surviving required every resource he had. And then, he took the hardest chapter of his own story and turned it into something he hoped could reach someone else fighting the same battle. That is not a story about failure. That is the single most courageous thing anyone connected to this show has ever done. Not a close call. Saying, Angela Montenegro was the soul of the Jeffersonian. The artist surrounded by scientists. The woman who transformed fragments of what used to be a person into faces, into names, into the thing families need most. The knowledge that someone looked at what remained of their loved one and fought to bring them home. Michaela Conlin was born June 8th, 1978, in Allentown, Pennsylvania. After Bones, she found her way into Yellowstone and has been holding her own in one of the most watched dramas on American television. Private and steady, letting the work carry itself. Jack Hodgins gave the show its conspiracy theory heartbeat and one of its quietest but most powerful love stories. TJ Thyne was born March 4th, 1975, in Newport Beach, California. After more than a decade as Hodgins, he made a choice almost no one in his position makes. He chose actual rest, marathons, travel, life lived at a distance from the industry's constant appetite for your next move. A man who gave 12 years to a character and decided he had earned the right to exist without a project attached to his name for a while. There is real dignity in that decision. More than people usually acknowledge. No. One more person. One more face that millions of Bones viewers loved across multiple seasons without always stopping to learn the name of the man behind it. Max Keenan. Temperance Brennan's father. Max was not a good man in the clean and simple way television usually asks you to root for its characters. He was a fugitive. He was a man who looked at his 2 children, made a calculation about what their survival required, and chose to vanish from their lives entirely, and then spent years living inside that decision, inside what it cost, Temperance, what it did to us, the particular and irreversible damage that accumulates when a parent chooses to become a ghost and leaves their children to interpret that silence for the rest of their lives. And then he tried to come back. Not cleanly, not with a single apology that the show let land and move on from. Messily, imperfectly. With every choice he had ever made pressing in on every conversation he tried to have with the daughter who had spent her entire adult life building walls specifically because of him and who had never, underneath all of it, stopped needing him to try. Ryan O'Neal brought something to that role that cannot be manufactured. Born April 20th, 1941, in Los Angeles, California. Love story. Paper Moon. Barry Lyndon. 50 years of American cinema. A career full of real brilliance and real turbulence in equal measure. Scandal. Losses. The kind of weight that would have broken most people completely. He kept working. He kept showing up. And on Bones. Every time Max Keenan walked into a scene, you felt the full accumulation of a man who was not asking for forgiveness, only asking to be given the chance to do something better than what he had done before. On December 8th, 2023, Ryan O'Neal passed away at the age of 82. He had been fighting leukemia for years, quietly, without making it into a story that needed anyone else's attention. When the tributes came, they focused on Love Story and Paper Moon and half a century of film. But in the comments, in the fan pages, in the threads where the people who watched Bones together still find each other, they remembered Max Keenan, the father who came back, the man who tried. Ryan O'Neal gave that to this show, and no industry obituary will ever fully capture what it was worth. Bones ended. The lab went dark. 12 seasons of Tuesday nights became something you carry with you in the way a specific song transports you back to a couch you sat on. A specific version of yourself you used to be. A person you watched it with who mattered enormously at the time. Some of these people became titans. Some chose silence on their own terms and never asked anyone to understand why. Some fought battles the audience never saw. And some are gone now, leaving behind only the episodes, the reruns, and the memory of characters who once felt for just a little while. Week after week, like people you genuinely knew. Which one left the deepest mark on you, Brennan? Who spent 12 years learning how to feel Booth? Who never stopped believing even when the evidence said he should Zack? Whose story the fandom still has not fully made peace with? Or Max, the father who found his way home? Played by a man who understood exactly what that kind of journey demands and costs. Leave it in the comments. Because the people who watch this show together, they deserve to be heard. And so do you.